Isn't the only country facing economic pressure and social volatility from unrestrained immigration. Just 3 years ago, Europe faced its own wave of migrants from Africa and the Middle East. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel responded to this by accepting nearly 1 million migrants in a single year. Adjusted for population, that would be like this country taking in 4 million in just 12 months. 3 years after that, how has that decision affected Germany and Merkel's political career? Rick Grinnell is the current U.S. ambassador to Germany, and he joins us tonight. Ambassador, thanks very much for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Tucker.
So you're starting to see even figures on the left, John Kerry and Hillary Clinton most prominently, but others, rethinking the political fallout from Merkel's decision to do that in Germany. From where you sit, what was the effect of letting in those migrants?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the political effect. There was no plan in place, so the policy really fell apart. Chancellor Merkel and many in Germany had big hearts. They wanted to do something, but there wasn't a plan. And so even Chancellor Merkel now, all these years later, has agreed that there was no plan, and therefore the entire policy kind of fell apart because it wasn't implemented with hardcore security measures and follow-up. So from the political standpoint, next week, Chancellor Merkel is giving up her chairmanship of the party. There are 3 other people running, and the top issue, one of the top issues, is migration and her handling of migration. So politically, I would say that it really toppled her and has forced her now to give up the chairmanship of a party that she once ran with a very strong arm.
What's so interesting watching Germany from here is how the German press and its cultural leaders responded. So this was 3 years ago, and it was immediately obvious that a lot of ordinary Germans didn't like it, and that it was causing the crime rate to go up, and that it was causing economic pressure on ordinary Germans. But people weren't allowed to say that for a number of years in public, or am I misreading it?
No, you're exactly right, and I would even go so far as to say that we still have that problem here in Germany. There's still an overreaction if you complain about wanting secure borders or just an orderly process. Look, this is not about whether or not you have a heart. This is about whether or not you have a plan. And we in the United States know that 1 million people a year get U.S. citizenship. We are very generous. This is not about not wanting to have immigrants. And the whole idea that the left or some on the right even or the media are somehow mixing up legal immigration with illegal immigration is really an outrage. And those of us in public policy positions have to be able to push back and say, look, we're not talking about legal immigration. The United States is very generous. Germany has been very generous. This is about whether or not you have a plan, because not everyone is going to be able to come. And that's what you have to be able to say is we must prioritize. What is that number? Is it 1 million people in the United States? Is it 4 million people in Germany over a number of years? What is that number? Because whatever that number is, it's still going to be too low. You're still going to turn people away. So let's have an orderly process and figure out how to do legal immigration and do it the right way.
Are people, because I think that's what we need in the United States, is an honest adult conversation about what we can afford, what's good for our country, and what the next 100 years looks like demographically. We can't have that conversation here. Can Germans have it?
Look, I think the United States is having a better conversation than the Germans, to be honest. This has largely been controlled by elites in Berlin, but normal everyday people are beginning to say, wait a minute, this policy is not working. This is not about being generous. We are very generous. They have a lot of open borders throughout Europe. But I would also argue that the mistakes of Germany, Tucker, have rippled throughout all of Europe, because we've seen in Austria, for instance, with Sebastian Kurz, who came in with a platform to say, we must have security and a set of rules. This is not about not being generous. This is not about not being open to immigrants, but this is about just having rules. And once he established the fact that he wanted rules, Sebastian Kurz won in a very big way and is now becoming very popular throughout Germany.
Yes.
So while some in the media in Germany will try to push this into saying, well, you're a radical far-right person, the reality is that normal everyday Germans and Europeans are clamoring for leaders who want to have safe and secure borders in an orderly process.
Right. Well, if they want to create radicals, they should keep lying to the population, because that's what they're going to get. Ambassador Grinnell, thank you very much. Great to see you tonight.
Nobody.
Thanks, Tucker.
Not the Republicans, not the Democrats, not Trump's staff, nobody. Not one person called that. Well, you did. You did. You must be, here's what I've learned. Actually, that's not true. I did meet one person, and he's a university professor at a college in upstate New York I've never heard of before or since, and he's a native German speaker who barely speaks English and knows nothing about American politics. And the point is, he was so off the grid mentally that it was obvious to him. So if you take a piece of pork sausage and hold it in front of a dog, and then recite the Gettysburg Address, the dog does not hear a word you say because he doesn't speak English. He looks only at the pork sausage. And so the only people who could see what was going to happen are the people who are not distracted by all the noise. And this guy who didn't know anything about American politics just parachutes in and he's like, yeah, Trump's going to win. And everyone's like, yeah, German guy, shh, you know, adults are talking. But anyway, the point is, the rest of us didn't think this was likely because it wasn't likely. Because even if you thought the Republican was going to win, there was a fairly deep bench of those to choose from. Like a very deep bench. I think there was over 100 Republican candidates, or several hundred, whatever. There's a lot. And it's like, why wouldn't you pick one of those? Why would you pick the guy who'd never been in politics at all? Yeah, that's the answer. Exactly. That's the answer. So what I found so striking, having, again, spent a year of my life following Trump around, who I knew, by the way, just because I'm in the media, and like everyone in the media knows Trump, for 20 years. What I found so striking was not that people in Washington were mad that he got elected, and boy, were they, on a bipartisan basis, too. And this didn't really get reported, I don't think, to the extent it should have been, simply because it was reality. Reality is often the one thing that's never reported. But the people who were maddest were actually the permanent Republican establishment in Washington, really mad. And they were mad because they felt really threatened by Trump. And then, of course, the Democrats, I mean, this was like literally their nightmare. Actually, that's not true. Let me just note for a second. Trump is not what they feared. So growing up in this state, and I grew up around liberals, honestly, they would always tell you what they feared. They would always say, if Republicans ever got total control, what's the thing they would do? I mean, for 50 years, Democrats said the same thing. Turn this into a theocracy. You know what I mean? And like, it would be the Handmaid's Tale, and it would be basically a medieval country where women would be in some kind of coverings, and you know what I mean? We'd be speaking Old English, and we'd sort of ban happiness, and you know what I mean? And like, we're going to elect Jerry Falwell to do that, and it's those religious nuts who are so scary. But when it actually happened, it being the election they feared most, it was not that at all. It was a very kind of secular New Yorker who'd been in the casino business, who was not an evangelical at all. I'm not mocking, just there are different kind of cultures in this country, and that wasn't his. My friend did the famous interview where he asked Trump what his favorite book of the Bible was. And Trump goes, the Bible. My friend goes, no, but what's your favorite book of the Bible? And Trump, like, it's a trick question, obviously. He's like, narrowing his eyes, like, look, the Bible, okay? I think he's learned a lot since then. But the point is, this was not what they expected. It's not what they predicted. It wasn't the fever dream that had haunted them for decades. It was the opposite of that, and they found it more threatening. Now, why is the question? So first, to the initial query, which is, why did this happen? And in Washington, this is what made me so angry. The explanations were so contemptuously dumb that I just couldn't even sit there and listen to them. And for the first week I did, because these are the conventional stages of grief, something that happens, you know, that you don't like and that you don't want to happen. So of course, immediately, you know, your first reaction is denial. Like, well, that actually didn't happen. Didn't happen. You know, got elected president? Yeah, I don't think so. No. It can't happen, therefore it didn't. So your first instinct is to kind of project your will and erase reality. Well, that doesn't work ever. So your second reaction is to convince yourself that you have power over something that you have no power over. So we're going to beat this. And well, how are you going to beat it? You just won. We're going to take it from the Electoral College. You know, that's never been done. Really? You're really going to do that? Yeah, yes, we are. You know, yes, we can. Si se puede. Yes, we can. And they actually kind of convince themselves of that. Well, that was insane. And by the way, totally non-democratic. So when that didn't happen, they went to the third stage, which is, you know, some unseen actor did this. This is how, you know, Stalin used to explain the failure of the potato famine. You know, it's like the Soviet system is awesome. It works perfectly. And if it weren't for unseen saboteurs, we would have reached our goal. And so the unseen saboteurs, of course, were Putin. Putin did it. And I remember when they first hit me with that storyline, the first guest came on, it was like the first week of my show. Yeah, it was Putin did it. I'm thinking, really? Putin did it?